I knew the moment my daughter laughed at my diary, something inside me was about to break. Emily stood in my living room, flipping through pages I had written years ago. Pages I never meant for anyone to read. She read them out loud, her voice sharp, mocking like my memories were nothing more than a joke. Her friends laughed with her. Then she turned one more page, and suddenly she stopped. Her smile disappeared. Her hands froze, because she had just read the page about the day she was born. And for the first time in years, my daughter looked at me not with judgment, but with fear. If you've ever been misunderstood by someone you love, tell me in the comments. And if you're watching from somewhere in the world right now, let me know where and what time it is. Don't forget to like and subscribe because some truths take years to be heard. After that moment, after the laughter died and the silence swallowed the room, Emily didn't say a single word to me. She just closed the diary. Not gently, not respectfully, but not mockingly either. Carefully. That was what scared me the most, because for the first time in years, my daughter wasn't dismissing me. She was thinking. And Emily Parker rarely paused to think about me. She had built an entire life where I simply didn't exist. I watched her standing there in my living room, her fingers still resting on the worn leather cover of my diary. Her friends shifted awkwardly, no longer amused. One of them, Jessica, I think, cleared her throat and whispered something about needing to go. Within seconds, they were gone. And just like that, it was only the two of us. Emily didn't look at me. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her voice lower now. Different. Controlled. I swallowed. "It's mine." I know that she snapped, but there was no real anger behind it, just confusion. "I mean, why do you still have it? Why keep something like this?" "Because it was the only place I ever told the truth." But I didn't say that. Instead, I answered the way I always had for the past 10 years. Carefully, vaguely trying not to push her too far. "It's just memories," I said quietly. Emily let out a short breath, almost a laugh. But it died halfway through. "Memories," she repeated. "That's what you call it." Her eyes finally lifted to meet mine, and there it was again. Not anger, not even resentment. Something else, something unsettled. "You wrote about things I don't remember," she said. "Things that don't match." My heart tightened. Of course they didn't match. They were never supposed to. For years, I had lived with that quiet contradiction. The life she believed in, and the life I had actually lived. I had learned how to nod when she spoke about the past, how to smile at stories that had missing pieces, how to let her hold on to a version of her childhood that felt safe, even if it wasn't entirely true. "Memories can be complicated," I said gently. Emily shook her head. "No, this isn't complicated. This is..." She hesitated, searching for the word. "This is wrong." Her hand moved back to the diary, flipping through pages faster now. I could hear the paper brushing against itself, the soft, frantic sound of someone chasing something they didn't fully understand. "Here," she said, stopping abruptly. "You wrote that you were alone, that you had no one. But that doesn't make sense." She looked up again, her brows furrowed. "You had Dad. You always had Dad." Michael. Even now, hearing her say it like that, so certain, so absolute, made something twist inside me. Michael Keller had been a good man, a kind man, the kind of man who stepped into a life that wasn't his and chose to love it anyway. But he hadn't been there at the beginning, and that was the part Emily had never known. "Things weren't always the way you remember them," I said softly. "That's not fair," she shot back, her voice rising slightly. You can't just say that and expect me to accept it. I'm not asking you to accept anything, I replied. I'm just telling you memories don't always tell the whole story. She stared at me like I had just spoken a different language. For a moment, I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who would tilt her head when she didn't understand something, her eyes searching mine for reassurance. But that girl disappeared quickly, replaced by the woman who had spent years building distance between us. This is exactly what you always do, Emily said, crossing her arms. You avoid things. You talk in circles. You never give a straight answer, because the straight answer would have broken you. I felt the words rise in my chest, sharp and desperate, but I pushed them down. I had done that for years. I could do it again. I didn't want to confuse you, I said instead. Confuse me, she repeated, almost incredulous. You think I'm confused now, Judith. She stopped herself. The name hung in the air between us. Judith. Not Mom. Not anymore. That had changed a long time ago. I'm not a child. She continued, her tone colder now. If there's something I don't know, I deserve to hear it. My hands tightened at my sides. Deserve. She wasn't wrong, but deserving something and being ready for it, those were two very different things. I told you what I could, I said quietly. No. Emily shook her head firmly. You told me what you wanted me to believe. The words landed harder than she probably realized, because she wasn't entirely wrong. I had shaped her world carefully, piece by piece, choosing what to say and what to keep hidden. Not out of selfishness, not out of fear of being judged, but out of love. At least that was what I had always told myself. Emily turned away from me, then pacing slowly across the room. She ran a hand through her hair, something she used to do as a teenager when she was frustrated. I hadn't seen that gesture in years. You know what the worst part is, she said after a long pause. I didn't answer. You always act like you're the victim, she continued, like everything just happened to you. But reading this, she tapped the diary. This doesn't make you look like a victim. It makes you look like someone who made choices. Big ones. I let out a slow breath. She was getting closer. Closer than she had ever been. Yes, I said. I did make choices, and you never thought I should know about them? I thought... My voice faltered slightly. I thought I was protecting you. Emily laughed again, but there was no humor in it this time. Protecting me from what? The truth, from the feeling of being unwanted. From the possibility that your entire identity could shift in a single moment. From the question every child fears asking, why didn't she stay? But I didn't say any of that. I didn't want to hurt you. I said simply. Emily stopped pacing. Slowly, she turned back to face me. And you think this doesn't hurt? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes were different now. No longer sharp. No longer mocking. Just searching. I don't even know what's real anymore, she said. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in around us. This was the moment I had feared for years. Not anger, not rejection, but this. Uncertainty. The kind that unravels everything you thought you knew about yourself. Emily walked back to the table and placed her hand on the diary again. This page, she said quietly. The one about the day I was born. My breath caught. She looked up at me. You wrote things that don't make sense, she continued. You wrote that you were alone, that you were scared, that you didn't know if you could do it. Her fingers tightened slightly on the cover. But that's not how it happened, she said. Her voice was firm again, certain, like she was trying to hold on to something solid. You had Dad, she repeated. He was there. He told me he was there. I closed my eyes for just a second. Michael. Even in death, he had kept his promise. He had given her a story that felt safe, a story where she was wanted from the very beginning, a story where no one walked away. But stories weren't always the truth. When I opened my eyes again, Emily was still watching me, waiting. For once, actually waiting. And I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to believe until that moment. She was ready. Or at least she was ready enough. I took a slow step forward. "Emily," I said softly. Her name felt heavier now, more fragile. There are things about that day I paused, choosing my words carefully. Things I never told you. Her expression didn't change, but I could see it, that flicker of fear again. The same one from earlier. What things she asked. I glanced down at the diary, at the page that had stayed closed for so many years. The page that held the truth I had buried. And for the first time, I didn't look away. That day, I said quietly, wasn't what you think it was. The silence that followed felt endless. Emily didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe. And in that silence, everything we had built, every memory, every belief, every version of our past, hung on the edge of breaking. There was a time when Emily didn't look at me like I was a stranger. Sometimes I have to remind myself of that because the version of her standing in front of me now feels so distant from the little girl I once knew. Back then, she used to reach for my hand without thinking. Not because she was afraid, but because she trusted me completely. I can still remember the way her fingers curled around mine the first time she learned how to cross the street by herself. She must have been 5, maybe 6. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and serious, like the world was something she was just beginning to understand. "Don't let go," she said, and I didn't. Not then. Not ever. Even when she grew older and started pulling away, even when she stopped needing me the way she used to, I never let go. At least not in the ways that mattered. Emily was always a quiet child. Not shy, not withdrawn, but thoughtful. The kind of child who would sit for hours with a book or ask questions that didn't have easy answers. "Why do people lie?" she asked me once when she was 8. I remember pausing, unsure how to respond. Sometimes I said slowly, "People lie because they're afraid of hurting someone they love." She considered that for a long moment. "Does that make it okay?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. Even then, I think a part of me knew that question would come back one day. "No," I said finally. "But sometimes people think it's the only way." She didn't seem satisfied with that answer, but she nodded anyway. That was Emily, always accepting more than she should, always trusting that I knew what I was doing. For years, our life felt steady. Michael was there, warm, patient, always ready with a quiet joke or a reassuring smile. He stepped into the role of father so naturally that sometimes even I forgot there had ever been a time before him. He taught Emily how to ride a bike. He stayed up late helping her with school projects. He cheered the loudest at every recital, every small achievement, and she adored him. There was never a moment when she questioned whether he was her father. Not once, and I let her believe it, because watching them together, it felt real. It felt right. We built a life that looked complete from the outside. And for a while, it was enough to convince even myself. Emily would come home from school and run straight into the kitchen, dropping her backpack on the floor without a second thought. "Mom, you have to hear this," she'd say, her voice full of excitement. She told me everything. Every detail of her day, every small victory, every disappointment. There were nights when she would crawl into my bed long after she was supposed to be asleep just to talk. "Can you stay until I fall asleep?" she would whisper. And I always did. I would sit beside her, brushing her hair back gently, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing until it slowed. Those were the moments I held on to, the ones I wrote about in my diary. Not because I was afraid of forgetting, but because I was afraid of losing them. Because somewhere deep inside, I always knew how fragile it all was, how easily it could fall apart. The first crack didn't come suddenly. It never does. It started small. Subtle changes in her tone, in the way she looked at me. Questions that lingered just a little longer than they used to. "Why don't I have any baby pictures before a certain age?" she asked once when she was 13. I smiled, keeping my voice light. "We lost some things when we moved," I said. She nodded, accepted it. But I saw it, that flicker of doubt. It disappeared quickly, but it was there. And once doubt finds its way in, it doesn't leave easily. By the time she turned 16, that quiet curiosity had grown into something sharper, something harder to ignore. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. At least it started that way. I had been out running errands, picking up groceries, stopping by the pharmacy. Nothing unusual. Nothing that should have changed anything. When I got home, the house was too quiet. No music, no television, no sound of Emily moving around upstairs. I remember setting the grocery bags down on the kitchen counter, calling out her name. "Emily." No answer. I took a step toward the stairs when I heard it. The sound of something falling. Paper. Rustling. Coming from my bedroom. My heart skipped. I didn't think. I just moved. Up the stairs, down the hallway, straight to the door I had always kept closed. Not locked, just closed. I pushed it open. And there she was, standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by papers. Old documents I hadn't touched in years. Things I had hidden away, carefully tucked into a box at the back of my closet. Things I thought she would never find. But she had. Emily turned toward me slowly, her face pale. In her hand was a single sheet of paper. I knew what it was before she even spoke. "Who is Claire Dawson?" she asked. Her voice was steady. Too steady, like she was holding something back. I felt the world tilt slightly beneath me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Of all the things I had prepared myself for over the years, this was the one I had hoped would never happen. "Emily," I started. Don't she cut me off, her eyes flashing. "Don't do that thing where you try to calm me down before telling me something that isn't true. I'm not." "Then answer me." Her grip tightened on the paper. "Who is she?" The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I had imagined this moment so many times, planned what I would say, how I would explain it. But standing there looking at her, really looking at her, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. There was no way to explain it without breaking something, and I didn't know if I could bear to be the one who did that. I hesitated. Emily took a step forward. "Is she my mother?" she asked. The question hung in the air between us. Sharp, unavoidable. And just like that, everything changed. Because there are moments in life when silence is no longer protection. When not answering becomes its own kind of truth. And in that moment, my silence said more than any words ever could. Emily's expression shifted, not all at once, but slowly. like something inside her was rearranging itself piece by piece. "You lied to me," she said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even an accusation. It was a realization, and it hit harder than anything she could have shouted. "I didn't lie," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I just didn't tell you everything." Her laugh this time was different, bitter, sharp. "Do you hear yourself?" she said. "That's the same thing." "No, it's not." "It is to me." Her eyes filled with something I had never seen before. Not just anger, not just hurt, but betrayal. Deep, unforgiving. "All this time," she continued, her voice shaking now. "All this time I thought I knew who I was. I thought I knew my own story. And you?" She gestured toward me, her hand trembling. "You just decided I didn't deserve the truth. I was trying to protect you." I said again, the words sounding weaker now even to me. "From what?" she demanded. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out, because the truth was, I didn't know how to put it into words. How do you explain to your child that the story of their beginning isn't just complicated? It's painful. Emily shook her head, stepping back as if putting distance between us might somehow make things clearer. "I can't believe this," she said softly. "I can't believe you." And just like that, the girl who used to reach for my hand let go. "You lied to me." Those 4 words didn't come out loud or explosive. They came out quiet, and somehow that made them worse. Because when anger fades, what's left behind is the truth. And the truth in Emily's voice that day was something I couldn't escape. She stood there in my bedroom, still holding the paper with Claire Dawson's name on it, like it was evidence in a case she had already decided. "I didn't lie," I said again, but the words felt thinner now. Fragile, like they could break if I pushed them too far. "You didn't tell me," she replied, her eyes fixed on mine. "You hid it. You avoided it. You let me believe something that wasn't true." Her voice started to rise. "That is lying, Judith." I flinched slightly at the way she said my name. "Not Mom. Not anymore. Just Judith, like I was someone she barely knew." "I was waiting for the right time," I said, trying to steady my voice. 16 years, she shot back. "That is your idea of the right time." The question hit harder than I expected, because I didn't have a good answer. I never had. "There is no right time for something like this," I admitted quietly. Emily laughed again, but this time it sounded hollow. "So you just decided for me," she said. "You decided what I could handle, what I deserved to know." Her hand shook slightly as she held up the paper. "Do you even realize what this is?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "It's my past," I said. "No," she snapped. "It's my past." The room went still. Because she was right, and I had never let her claim it. I should have been the one to decide what I wanted to know. She continued, her voice trembling now. "Not you. Not anyone else. I was trying to protect you," I repeated, but even as I said it, I could hear how weak it sounded, from what she demanded, again louder this time. I opened my mouth, closed it. The truth sat heavy in my chest, like something too sharp to touch. Because how do you tell your child that their beginning wasn't just complicated? It was unwanted. Emily took a step closer to me. "You keep saying that," she said, her voice lower now, but no less intense. "You keep saying you were protecting me. But from what Judith, From knowing who I am, her eyes searched mine, desperate now. Or from knowing who you are? That question cut deeper than anything else she had said. Because it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me, about the choices I had made, the ones I had buried. I never wanted to hurt you, I said quietly. Well, you did, she replied instantly. No hesitation, no softness, just truth. And the worst part, she continued, her voice breaking slightly. You didn't even trust me enough to tell me. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Because it wasn't anger I saw in her anymore. It was pain. Real, deep, undeniable pain. And I had caused it. Not by what I did, but by what I didn't say. Emily turned away from me, pacing across the room like she was trying to outrun her own thoughts. Claire Dawson, she muttered almost to herself. I've never heard that name before. Not once. Not in 16 years. She stopped, suddenly turning back toward me. Why, she asked. Why would you hide something like that? Who is she really? I took a slow breath, my hands trembling slightly at my sides. I had imagined this moment so many times. Planned it, rehearsed it, but standing here now with Emily looking at me like everything she knew was falling apart, I realized I had never truly been ready. I started, then stopped. Because once I said it, there would be no going back. Emily stepped closer again. Say it, she insisted. Her voice was softer now, but stronger. I need to hear it from you. The silence stretched between us, heavy, unavoidable. And then I said the one thing I had spent 16 years avoiding. She's the woman who gave birth to you. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, everything stopped. Emily didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. It was like time itself had paused, waiting for her to catch up to what I had just said. No, she whispered, finally, shaking her head slowly. No, that's not. It's true, I said gently. No, she repeated louder now. That's not possible. Her voice cracked. Dad told me. Michael told you what we both agreed you needed to hear, I said softly. Her eyes snapped back to mine. Don't, she said, her voice trembling. Don't you dare twist this into something else. He was my father. He wouldn't lie to me. Michael told you what we both agreed you needed to hear, I said softly. Her eyes snapped back to mine. Don't, she said, her voice trembling. Don't you dare twist this into something else. He was my father. He wouldn't lie to me. I know, I said quickly, and he didn't lie to you about loving you. Not for a second. But what? She demanded. I hesitated, because this was the part that would hurt the most. He wasn't there when you were born. The words landed like a blow. Emily staggered back slightly like she had physically felt them. That's not true, she said, her voice shaking. He told me. He said he held me. He said he was there in the hospital. He held you, I said. But not that day. Her breathing became uneven, fast, unsteady. You're lying, she whispered. You're just trying to, fix this? Make yourself look better. I'm telling you the truth, I said firmly. No. She shook her head again, tears starting to form in her eyes. No, this doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. She looked down at the paper in her hand, like it might somehow give her the answers I couldn't. Claire Dawson, she said again, softer this time. If she gave birth to me, Then where is she? The question I had been dreading. The one I knew would come next. I felt my throat tighten. She's gone, I said quietly. Emily looked up sharply. Gone, she repeated. What does that mean? Gone where I hesitated, and that hesitation was enough. Her expression changed instantly. You don't know, she said. You don't know, she repeated louder now. Or you won't tell me. I do know, I said quickly, but it's not that simple. Then make it simple, she shouted. Her voice echoed through the room louder than anything she had said before. I deserve that much, don't I? After everything? I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. You do. And for the first time, I realized there was no more hiding, no more softening the edges, no more half-truths, because the truth wasn't just coming out anymore. It was already here, and Emily was standing right in the middle of it, waiting for everything I had never said. Emily didn't speak for a long time after that. She just stood there staring at me like she was trying to decide whether I was someone she knew or someone she had completely misunderstood. I don't believe you, she said finally. The words came out quietly, but they carried weight. I know, I replied. Because I did know. Belief doesn't shift in a single moment, not when it's been built over 16 years, not when it's tied to everything you think you know about yourself. Emily shook her head, taking a step back, like she needed distance to think clearly. No, she repeated. Know this. This doesn't make sense. None of it does. Her voice was steadier now, but I could hear the strain underneath. You're telling me my entire life is based on something that isn't real, she asked. That the person I thought was my mother isn't even my mother. I am your mother. Her voice was steadier now, but I could hear the strain underneath. You're telling me my entire life is based on something that isn't real, she asked. That the person I thought was my mother isn't even my mother. I am your mother. I said a little more firmly this time. She laughed, but it wasn't cruel. It was confused, hurt. How? She asked. How can you say that after what you just told me? Because being a mother was never about blood. But I knew that wasn't enough. Not right now. Not for her. I raised you, I said softly. I was there every day of your life. I loved you before you even knew who I was. That's not the same, she said quickly. Her reaction didn't surprise me. It hurt, but it didn't surprise me. Because Emily had always seen the world in clear lines. Right or wrong, truth or lie, family or stranger. And what I had just told her blurred all of that. I needed you to tell me the truth, she continued, her voice rising again. Not this version of things where everything suddenly changes. I didn't want everything to change, I said. Well, it has, she snapped. The room went quiet again. Emily looked down at the diary still sitting on the table, her fingers brushing against the edge of it, like she wasn't sure whether to pick it up again or push it away. You had years, she said softly. Years to tell me. I know, and you didn't. I was afraid. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Emily froze. Slowly she looked up at me, afraid of what she asked. I hesitated, because this was the part I had never been able to explain, not even to myself. I was afraid you would look at me the way you're looking at me right now, I said. Her expression flickered. For just a second. Something softer, but it disappeared quickly. "You think this is about how I look at you," she said. "This is about trust, Judith. You broke that." "I know I did," I admitted. That seemed to catch her off guard. Maybe she expected me to defend myself, to argue, to explain it away. But I didn't, because there was nothing to defend. I took a breath, trying to steady myself. "I didn't know how to tell you something that would make you question everything about your own life." Emily crossed her arms tightly. "You should have tried," she said. "I did," I replied quietly. "More times than you think." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means there were moments," I said, "when I almost told you. When I thought you were ready. When I thought maybe it wouldn't break you the way I was afraid it would. And every time I looked at you," I continued, my voice softening, "you were happy. You felt secure. You believed you were loved from the very beginning." Her expression shifted again. Confusion, hesitation. "And you were," I added quickly, "you were loved, completely." "But not by you?" she asked. The question hit me like a punch to the chest. "That's not true," I said immediately. "That's never been true." "Then why hide it?" she pressed. "Because I didn't want you to feel like you were second choice." The words came out sharper than I intended. And the moment they did, I knew I couldn't take them back. Emily blinked. "What she said? I didn't want you to feel like someone else didn't want you." I explained, my voice trembling now. "I didn't want you to grow up wondering why she left, why she didn't stay, why she—" I stopped myself. But it was too late. Emily's face had already changed. "Why she what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I closed my eyes for a moment, because this was the line I had never wanted to cross. The truth that didn't just explain things, but shattered them. "She didn't leave because she had a better life waiting," I said slowly. "She left because she couldn't keep you." Emily's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. "She didn't come back," I continued. "Not once. Not ever." The silence that followed felt suffocating. Emily's breathing became uneven again, like she was trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. "That's not—" she started, then stopped. "That's not possible." "It is," I said gently. "No," she shook her head. "No, you don't know that. You don't know why she left." "I do," I said. Her eyes snapped to mine. "And you never thought I deserved to know that," she demanded. "I thought you deserved a childhood where you didn't feel abandoned," I said. Her expression broke. "Not completely, but enough." "You don't get to decide that for me," she whispered. "I know," I said, and I did. I had known for years. But knowing something and being able to act on it, those were very different things. Emily turned away from me again, her shoulders tense, her hands clenched at her sides. "This is too much," she said. "I can't just stand here and process all of this like it's nothing. I'm not asking you to," I said. "Then what are you asking?" she shot back. I hesitated, because the truth was, I wasn't asking for anything. Not forgiveness, not understanding, not even acceptance. "I just don't want to lie to you anymore," I said finally. Emily let out a slow breath, her back still turned to me. "Well," she said quietly, "you picked a pretty terrible time to start telling the truth." I almost smiled at that. Almost? Maybe I admitted. "But at least now you know." She turned her head slightly, just enough for me to see her profile. "And what am I supposed to do with that?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. Because the truth isn't something you do anything with. It's something you live with, something that changes you, whether you want it to or not. Emily walked back to the table slowly, her eyes falling on the diary again. For a moment, I thought she might push it away. Close it. Pretend none of this had happened. But she didn't. Instead, she reached for it. Her fingers hesitated for just a second. Then she opened it again. "Where does it start?" she asked quietly. My heart tightened. "With the truth?" I said. She nodded once, then lowered her eyes to the page. And just like that, my daughter began reading the story I had never been able to tell her. Emily didn't look at me again after she opened the diary. It was as if I had disappeared from the room entirely. All that mattered now was the truth written on those pages. I watched her eyes move slowly across the first lines, her expression tightening with every sentence. Her fingers pressed lightly against the paper, like she needed something solid to hold on to. For years, those pages had been mine alone. My safe place, the only place where I never had to pretend. And now they were hers. "It starts before me," she said quietly, not looking up. "Yes," I answered, her brow furrowed. "Why?" "Because your story didn't begin the day you were born." But I let her find that out herself. She kept reading. The room was silent except for the soft turning of pages and the uneven rhythm of her breathing. After a moment, she spoke again. "You wrote about being alone," she said, "about not having anyone, about barely making rent working 2 jobs. Her voice trailed off like she was trying to match those words with the version of me she knew. "That's not how I remember things," she added. "I know," I said. "Why didn't you ever tell me this?" she asked. I hesitated, because the answer was simple and complicated. "Because I didn't want you to grow up thinking life started from struggle," I said. "I wanted you to believe things were always stable, always safe." Emily shook her head, slightly still reading. "That's not real? Because I didn't want you to grow up thinking life started from struggle," I said. "I wanted you to believe things were always stable, always safe." Emily shook her head slightly still reading. "That's not real?" she murmured. "No," I agreed, but it felt better. She didn't respond to that. Instead, she turned another page, and another. Her pace slowed, because this was where everything changed. I could tell by the way her posture shifted, the way her shoulders tensed, the way her breathing grew quieter. She had reached the part where Claire first appeared. Claire Dawson. Emily read aloud, her voice softer now. The name sounded different when she said it, less like an accusation, more like a question. "She showed up at your work?" Emily asked, glancing at me briefly. I nodded. "It was late," I said. "Near closing time. I was working the evening shift at a small diner back then." Emily looked back down at the page. "She didn't have money." She continued reading. She looked scared. Her voice slowed as she processed the words. "You wrote that she kept checking the door, like she thought someone was following her." "That's exactly how she was," I said, quietly. Emily swallowed. "She was pregnant," she read. The word hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. "Yes," I confirmed. Emily's eyes flickered, but she didn't stop. "She asked you for help," she continued. "Not money, not food. Just help." Her voice trembled slightly now. What kind of help, she asked, even though the answer was already in front of her. She needed somewhere to stay, I said. Just for a few nights. She said she didn't have anyone else. Emily frowned. And you just let her? She asked. I nodded. Yes. Why? The question came quickly, sharp, suspicious. Because she needed it, I replied simply. Emily shook her head. You didn't even know her. No, I said. But I knew what it looked like when someone had nowhere to go. She stared at the page for a long moment, like she was trying to decide whether that made sense, or whether it made me reckless, or naive. She stayed with you? Emily asked. For a while, I said. How long? Long enough for everything to change. Emily's fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the paper. She turned the page again. This time, more carefully. More deliberately, as if she knew she was getting closer to something she wasn't ready to see. You wrote that she barely spoke at first, Emily read. That she kept to herself, that she avoided questions. That's true, I said. But you didn't push her, Emily said. It wasn't a question. No, I replied. I didn't. Why not? Because sometimes people don't need questions, I said. They just need time. Emily's jaw tightened. You always do that, she said. Do what? You make everything sound simple, she replied. Like there's always a good reason for everything. I didn't answer that, because sometimes there wasn't. She went back to reading. Her expression softened slightly as she moved through the next few entries. She started helping around the apartment, Emily said. Cooking, cleaning, paying you back in small ways? I nodded. She didn't want to feel like a burden. Emily hesitated. She paused, searching for the right word. Normal. She was, I said. Then why does this feel like something terrible is coming? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because it was. Because I had known it even then. From the moment she walked through my door. Some stories don't begin with hope. They begin with something already broken. Emily turned another page. Her breathing slowed again. And then she stopped, her eyes fixed on a single paragraph. I knew exactly which one. She got sick, Emily read quietly. Yes. She collapsed in your apartment. Yes. And you took her to the hospital. Yes. Her voice grew tighter with each word. She didn't have insurance. Emily continued. No ID, no family contact listed. I nodded slowly. That's when I realized how alone she really was. Emily swallowed hard. And she still didn't tell you anything she asked. Not everything I said. But enough. Enough for what? For me to understand that she was running from something? I answered. Emily looked up at me then. Really looked. What kind of something? She asked. I held her gaze. The kind that makes someone believe they have no future, I said. The room went quiet again. Emily looked back down at the diary, but this time, she didn't turn the page right away. She just sat there, processing, thinking. Slowly she exhaled. She wasn't just some random woman, she said. No, I replied. She mattered to you. Yes. Emily's voice dropped even lower. Why I hesitated? Because this was the part that was harder to explain. She reminded me of someone, I said finally. Emily frowned. Who I met her eyes. Myself. She mattered to you. Yes. Emily's voice dropped even lower. Why? I hesitated. because this was the part that was harder to explain. She reminded me of someone, I said finally. Emily frowned. Who? I met her eyes. Myself. That answer seemed to land deeper than anything else, because for the first time, Emily wasn't just reading about Claire. She was starting to understand me, and that made everything more complicated. Because the story she was reading was no longer just about the past. It was about who I had been, and the choices that shaped everything that came after. Emily looked down at the diary again. Her fingers hovered over the next page. She didn't turn it right away, because I think she already knew that once she did, there would be no going back. Emily turned the page, and everything changed. I didn't need to see the words to know where she was. I had memorized that part of the diary long before she was born. It was the part I had rewritten the most, not to change what happened, but to find a way to survive remembering it. She went into labor early. Emily read, her voice suddenly tight. Yes, she wasn't supposed to deliver for another month. No, I said softly. She wasn't. Emily's eyes moved faster now, scanning the lines like she was afraid to slow down. You wrote that it happened in the middle of the night, she continued, that she was in pain for hours before she told you. I nodded. She didn't want to go to the hospital, Emily added, frowning. That's right. Why not? I hesitated, because this was where fear began to take shape. She was afraid, I said, of what I met her eyes, of being found. Emily froze. Found by who I didn't know at the time, I admitted, but I knew it was serious. Emily swallowed hard, then looked back down at the page. You said she kept saying she couldn't go to the hospital, she read. That she begged you not to call anyone. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But you did anyway. Yes. Why? Because she was bleeding, I said. Because she was in too much pain. Because if I didn't, she might have died. Emily's lips parted slightly. And you didn't care if she got found? She asked. I cared, I said, but not more than I cared about keeping her alive. Emily stared at the page for a long moment. Then she turned it. Slower this time, more carefully, like she was stepping into something she couldn't undo. You wrote that she was crying the entire way to the hospital, Emily said. Not because of the pain, but because she kept saying she didn't want to lose the baby. Her voice broke slightly on the last word. Baby. I closed my eyes briefly. Yes, I whispered. She wanted me, Emily said, looking up suddenly. The question was in her eyes before it reached her lips. She did, I said. And that was the truth. A truth I had held on to for years, even when everything else felt uncertain. Emily exhaled shakily, like she hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. She wanted me, she repeated softer this time. Yes, that mattered. I could see it in her face. It didn't fix everything, but it mattered. Emily looked back down at the diary. Her hands were trembling now, not violently, just enough to show she was no longer in control of what she was feeling. You stayed with her, she read. At the hospital. I didn't leave her side. She kept asking you to promise something. Emily's voice slowed again. She asked you to promise that if anything happened, you would take care of the baby. The room felt still, heavy. I nodded. I promised. Emily's eyes flickered. Why would she ask that she said? Why would she think something would happen? Because she already knew. Because she had been running out of time long before that night. But I let Emily find that part herself. She was scared, I said. That's not enough, Emily replied. People don't ask for promises like that unless they know something is wrong. I didn't answer, and my silence said everything she needed to know. Emily looked down again. This time, she didn't hesitate. She turned the next page, and then she stopped breathing. I saw it happen. The moment her body went still. The moment her eyes locked onto a single line. The moment everything shifted. She didn't make it, Emily whispered. The words barely made it out, but they filled the entire room. No, I said quietly. She didn't. Emily's hand pressed against the page like she needed to hold it in place. You wrote that she died during delivery, she said. Yes. Her voice started to shake. That she never got to hold me. Yes. Her breathing became uneven. That she paused, her throat tightening. That she asked about the baby before she... Emily couldn't finish the sentence. She did, I said gently. Her last words were about you. Tears slipped down Emily's cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. She wanted to know if you were safe. I continued, if you were okay. Emily let out a small, broken sound. And you told her I was, she asked. Yes. Even though I wasn't born yet, yes, she nodded slowly, like she was trying to absorb that. Like she was trying to build something from it. She cared, Emily whispered. She did. That part I would never let be taken from her, no matter what else she learned. Emily's fingers tightened around the edge of the diary. And then, she said, her voice trembling again, you wrote that everything went quiet. I nodded. That's what it felt like. Emily looked up at me. Her eyes were filled with something different now. Not just anger, not just confusion, but grief. For someone she had never known. And that's when I was born, she said. Yes. She stared at me, waiting. For the rest. But the rest was the part that would change everything again. You wrote that I wasn't crying, she said slowly. My chest tightened. Yes. That the doctors were worried. Yes. Her voice dropped to a whisper. That they didn't know if I would make it. I swallowed hard. They weren't sure, I said. Emily's face went pale. And you, she hesitated, her eyes searching mine. You stayed. I didn't move, I said. Why? She asked. The question was simple, but the answer wasn't, because in that moment, everything had already changed. Because I had made a promise, I said quietly. Emily blinked. A promise, she repeated. I nodded. To her, I said, and to you. She stared at me, confused, uncertain, like she was standing at the edge of something she didn't fully understand yet. What kind of promise? She asked. I took a slow breath, because this was the part I had never told her, the part that lived only in those pages, the part that explained everything that came after, the kind of promise I said carefully that doesn't end when someone is gone. Emily's fingers tightened around the diary again, and I could see it. She knew, not fully, not yet, but she knew something bigger was coming, something that would change how she saw me, not just as someone who had lied, but as someone who had chosen. And for the first time since she started reading, Emily looked afraid of what that choice might be. Emily didn't turn the page right away. She just sat there staring at the words like they might change if she looked long enough. "They thought I might die," she said quietly. I nodded. "They weren't sure you would make it through the night." Her fingers pressed harder against the paper. "And you stayed," she added. "Yes." Her voice sharpened slightly. "Why?" she asked again. "You barely knew her. You didn't owe her anything." I took a slow breath. "You're right," I said. "I didn't owe her anything." Emily looked up. "So why?" she insisted. "Because I saw you before you were even born. Because I knew that if I walked away, no one else would stay. Because I had already made a choice without realizing it. But instead, I said the only thing I could explain. Because I promised," I repeated. Emily shook her head, frustrated. "That's not enough." Because I had already made a choice without realizing it. But instead, I said the only thing I could explain. Because I promised, I repeated. Emily shook her head, frustrated. "That's not enough," she said. "People don't change their lives over a promise to someone they just met." "I did," I said quietly. The room fell silent again, Gitley. The room fell silent again. Emily's eyes searched mine like she was trying to find something she had missed all these years. "You're not telling me everything," she said. "No," I admitted. "Then tell me." Her voice wasn't angry anymore. It was something else, something closer to pleading. I hesitated, because the next part of the story wasn't just about Claire. It was about me, about who I had been before she ever walked into my life. I knew what it felt like to have no one, I said slowly. Emily frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I continued, "I wasn't as strong as you think I was back then." She didn't interrupt this time. She just listened. "I was working 2 jobs, I said, barely making rent, living in a 1-bedroom apartment that felt smaller every day. I didn't have family nearby. No one checking in, no one asking if I was okay." Emily's expression softened slightly. "You never told me that," she said. "I didn't want you to see me that way." "What way?" "Alone." The word hung between us, heavy, honest. Emily looked back down at the diary. "You wrote about feeling stuck," she said, "like your life wasn't going anywhere." I nodded. That's how it felt. "And then she showed up," Emily added. "Yes." Her voice dropped again, and everything changed. It did. Emily turned another page, slower this time, more carefully. "She stayed with you longer than you expected," she read. "Weeks, not days." "Yes, you helped her go to doctor appointments," Emily continued. "You paid for things she couldn't afford." I nodded. "You barely had enough for yourself," she said. I managed. "How?" I gave a small, tired smile. I stopped thinking about myself. Emily didn't respond to that right away. She just kept reading. "She started opening up to you," she said after a moment. "Little by little." "Yes. She told you she didn't have family." "That's right. She told you she had nowhere to go after the baby was born." I nodded again. Emily's voice grew quieter. "And she told you she couldn't keep the baby." The words landed softly, but their weight filled the room. "Yes," I said. Emily looked up slowly. "Why?" she asked. I hesitated, because this was where things became harder. "She wasn't ready," I said carefully. "She didn't have the stability, the support, the kind of life a child deserves." Emily frowned. "That doesn't mean you give them up," she said. "No," I agreed. "It doesn't. Then why would she?" "She didn't want to," I interrupted gently. Emily stopped. What? She didn't want to give you up, I said. Not really. Emily's expression shifted again. Confusion, hope, fear. All those nights I continued, she would sit on the couch with her hands on her stomach talking to you like you could hear her. She would cry sometimes, not because she didn't love you, but because she didn't know how to keep you safe. Emily's lips parted slightly. She loved me, she said. Yes, the answer came without hesitation, because that was one truth I would never let her doubt. She just didn't believe she could give you didn't believe she could give you the life Faye you deserved. Emily shook her head slowly. That doesn't make sense, she whispered. It does when you're scared, I said. She looked back down at the diary. You wrote that she started asking you questions you deserved. Emily shook her head slowly. That doesn't make sense, she whispered. It does when you're scared, I said. She looked back down at the diary. You wrote that she started asking you questions, Emily said. Yes. What kind of questions? The kind that don't have easy answers, I replied. Emily frowned. Like what? Like what it means to be a mother, I said. Like whether loving a child is enough, even if you can't give them everything they need. Emily swallowed. And what did you tell her? I hesitated, because I remembered that conversation clearly. More clearly than almost anything else. I told her that love matters, I said. But so does stability, safety, being able to stay. Emily's fingers tightened slightly. And she couldn't stay, she said. No, I answered. Why not? The question came again. And this time, I couldn't avoid it. She was running, I said. From what? From people who wouldn't let her keep the baby, I said quietly. Emily's head snapped up. What? I held her gaze. She wasn't just scared, I continued. She was being pressured, pushed into a situation she didn't want. Emily's breathing became uneven again. By who? She asked. I shook my head slightly. She never gave me names, I said, but it was enough to know she didn't feel safe. Emily looked back down at the diary, her mind racing now. She trusted you, she said. Yes, more than anyone else. Yes. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And that's why she asked you to take me. The realization hit her all at once. I nodded slowly. Yes. Emily leaned back slightly like the weight of that truth had physically pushed her. She chose you, she said. The words sounded fragile, uncertain, but they were there. Yes, I said. Emily stared at me, not with anger, not with accusation, but with something else, something new. And you said yes, she added. I took a breath. Because this was the moment everything truly began. Yes, I said. I said yes before I even understood what that would mean. Emily's eyes didn't leave mine. Why? She asked one more time, and this time I didn't hesitate. Because I looked at her, I said softly, and I saw someone who was about to lose everything. I paused, then added, and I looked at you. And I knew I couldn't let that happen. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was different, still fragile, still uncertain, but no longer filled with anger. Emily looked down at the diary again. Her hand moved slowly toward the next page, and for the first time since she started reading, she didn't look like she was searching for something to prove me wrong. She looked like she was trying to understand. But understanding was only the beginning. because the next page was the one that would change how she saw me forever. Emily's fingers hovered over the next page. I could see it in her eyes. She already understood more than she wanted to. But she still needed to see it, to read it, to feel it. Slowly, she turned the page, and this time, she didn't speak right away. Her eyes moved line by line, her expression tightening, then softening, then breaking all over again. "She asked you to take me," Emily said finally. "Not as a question, as a realization?" "Yes," I said. Emily swallowed. "You didn't hesitate," she added, still reading. "You wrote that you said yes before you even thought about it." "That's true." Her voice grew quieter. "You didn't ask for time. You didn't ask what it would mean. You just said yes." I nodded slowly. "I already knew what it would mean," I said. Emily looked up. How, she asked, because there was no one else I answered. The simplicity of it seemed to hit her harder than anything else. She looked back down at the diary. "You wrote that the nurse asked if you were family," she continued. "And you said yes." "I did. But you weren't," she said. "I was becoming it," I replied. Emily exhaled slowly. Her hands were trembling more now, but she didn't stop reading. "You signed the papers," she said. "Temporary custody. Emergency authorization." "Yes." "You barely had enough money to pay your own rent," she added, her voice rising slightly. "How were you supposed to raise a baby I didn't know?" I said honestly. "Then why would you do it?" she asked. I met her eyes. "Because leaving you there wasn't an option." That answer stayed between us for a moment. Not dramatic, not loud, but undeniable. Emily blinked quickly like she was trying to hold something back. Then she looked down again. "You wrote that you held me for the first time," she said. Her voice softened. "Wrapped in a hospital blanket so small you were afraid to move." I felt my chest tighten. "Yes, you said I didn't cry much," she continued. "That I just stared. That's how I remember it." Emily's lips parted slightly. "What did you think?" she asked. The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "When you looked at me," she said. "What did you think?" I took a breath. Because that moment, that exact moment, had stayed with me my entire life. I said slowly, that I had just made the most terrifying decision of my life. Emily almost smiled. Almost. And she asked, "And I thought I couldn't let you go." The room went quiet again. Emily's eyes dropped back to the page. "You wrote that you stayed in the hospital overnight," she said. "Yes, that you refused to leave even when they told you visiting hours were over." "I remember arguing with the nurse," I said softly. "She kept telling me I had to go home. I told her I didn't have a home without you in it anymore." Emily's breath caught. She didn't respond. She just kept reading. "You didn't call anyone," she said. "Not a friend, not family, no one." "There wasn't anyone to call." Emily shook her head slowly. "That's not normal," she murmured. "No," I agreed. "It wasn't. You did all of this alone." "Yes." Her voice dropped again. "For me." I didn't answer, because that part didn't need words. Emily turned another page. And I knew we were getting close to the part that would hurt the most. "You wrote that they asked about the father," she said. Her voice was careful now. Measured. "Yes, and you didn't have an answer." "No." Emily's jaw tightened. "So Daniel Parker, she said slowly. He's not. No, I said gently. He's not your biological father. The words settled heavily between us. Emily didn't react immediately. She just stared at the page, her mind catching up to what she had just confirmed. He came later, I added. She nodded faintly. Michael Keller? She said. Yes, he knew, she asked. Everything, and he still. He chose you, I said. Emily's eyes filled again. He chose me, she repeated softly. Yes, and he chose me knowing I wasn't his. Yes, the tears came faster now, but she didn't stop reading. You wrote that you brought me home, she said. That you didn't even have a crib. That you used a laundry basket with blankets. I let out a quiet breath. I did. Emily shook her head, overwhelmed. That's insane, she whispered. It was real. You had no plan, she said. No support. No guarantee you could even do it. I nodded. And you still did it. Yes. Emily closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, something had shifted. Not completely, but enough. You didn't just take me, she said slowly. No. You built everything from nothing. I didn't respond. Because that wasn't how I had ever seen it. But maybe she was starting to. Emily looked back down at the diary. Her fingers brushed over the next page. You wrote that you were scared every day, she said. I was. That you kept waiting for someone to come and take me away. Yes. Her voice tightened again. Did anyone try? The question landed hard, because this was the part I had avoided telling her. The part that made everything more complicated. Not exactly, I said carefully. Emily looked up immediately. What does that mean? I hesitated, because once I said it, the story would change again. It means, I said slowly, there were people who knew about you. Her eyes narrowed slightly. What kind of people? The kind who didn't think I should be the one raising you? I said. Emily's expression shifted instantly. Why? Because I wasn't family? I answered. But you were the only one there, she said. Yes. Then why would they? Because they didn't see it that way, I said. The tension in the room grew again, slow, steady, like something was building beneath the surface. Emily looked back down at the diary. Her hands tightened. You wrote that you were afraid they might take me, she said. I was. And you wrote, she paused, her voice dropping to almost nothing, that you would fight anyone who tried. I held her gaze. I meant it. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was charged. Because this was no longer just about love. It was about choice, sacrifice, and something else. Something Emily was only just beginning to understand. She looked down at the final lines on the page, and when she spoke again, her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't mocking. It wasn't even questioning. It was something deeper. You didn't just become my mother, she said slowly. Her eyes lifted to meet mine. You chose to be. And for the first time, there was no doubt in her voice. Emily didn't turn the page right away this time. She held the edge of it between her fingers, but paused. Like she was afraid of what came next. You were ready to fight people for me, she said slowly. Yes. Her eyes searched mine again. You really thought someone might take me away? I didn't just think it, I said quietly. I was warned. Emily's hand froze. Warned, she repeated. I nodded. That's the part you haven't read yet. Her expression tightened. Then without another word, she turned the page. I watched her eyes scan the first few lines, and I saw it, that shift again. That moment when curiosity turns into fear. "You wrote that someone came to your apartment," she said. Her voice was tense now. "Yes. 2 days after you brought me home. That's right." Emily's grip on the diary tightened. "They knocked on your door." She continued reading. "You didn't open it at first. I didn't know who it was. And then they said Claire's name." The room felt colder somehow. Emily looked up. "Who were they?" she asked. I took a slow breath. "They said they were from a private agency," I said. Something that sounded official but wasn't. Emily frowned. "What kind of agency?" "The kind that handles arrangements," I said carefully. Her expression hardened. "That doesn't mean anything." "It didn't to me either," I admitted. "Not at first." Emily looked back down and kept reading. "They told you Claire had made an agreement," she said, "that the baby me was already promised to another family." Her voice broke slightly. "That's not possible," she said quickly. "You said she wanted me." "She did," I said firmly. "But she was desperate, and someone took advantage of that." Emily shook her head, her breathing becoming uneven again. "So, what they just decided I belonged to someone else?" she asked. "They believed they had a legal claim," I said, "or at least enough control to try." Emily's eyes filled with anger again. "And you just let them stand there and say that she demanded?" I gave a small, bitter smile. "No," I said, "I didn't." She looked back down at the diary, reading faster now. "You wrote that you refused to let them in," she said. "That you told them to leave." "Yes." "And they didn't." "No." Emily's jaw tightened. "They said they would come back," she read. "With paperwork. With authority." "That's what they claimed? And you believed them?" "I believed they were dangerous," I said. That seemed to hit her harder than anything else. Emily looked up slowly. "You were alone," she said. "Yes. With a newborn baby," she added. "Yes. And people were threatening to take her away." I nodded. Emily shook her head, overwhelmed. "That's insane," she whispered. It felt like it. She looked back down. "You wrote that you didn't sleep that night," she said. "I didn't. That you sat by my crib." She stopped correcting herself softly. "The laundry basket. All night." I almost smiled. "Yes, you kept checking to make sure I was breathing." "I did that for months." Emily exhaled slowly. "And you didn't call the police?" The question came sharp. I hesitated, because this was where things got complicated again. "I didn't know who to trust," I said. "What does that mean?" "It means," I continued, "they knew too much. They knew Claire's name. They knew about the birth. They knew where I lived." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "So you thought that someone had already given them access?" I finished. The room went quiet again. Emily's mind was moving fast now, piecing things together, understanding the stakes. "You were protecting me," she said. "Not as an accusation this time, as a realization." "Yes." Emily looked back down at the diary. Her hands were steadier now. Not calm, but focused. "You wrote that you started making a plan," she said. "I had to." "What kind of plan?" "One that would keep you safe," I said. Emily turned the page. Her eyes moved quickly now, reading with urgency. "You packed a bag," she said. "Just essentials. Clothes, documents, whatever cash you had?" "Yes." Emily turned the page. Her eyes moved quickly now, reading with urgency. "You packed a bag," she said. "Just essentials. Clothes, she said. Just essentials. Clothes, documents, whatever cash you had. Yes, you were ready to leave. I was. Her voice dropped. Leave where I didn't know yet. Emily looked up again. You were going to run, yes. For me. Cuments. Whatever cash you had. Yes, you were ready to leave. I was. Her voice dropped. Leave where I didn't know yet. Emily looked up again. You were going to run, yes. For me. Yes. The answer didn't need anything else. Emily swallowed hard, then looked back down. You wrote that you called someone, she said. Her voice slowed again. Someone named Daniel Parker. The name hung in the air, heavy, familiar, but different now. He helped, I said. Emily frowned. You said he's not my father, she said. Has not. Then who is he? I took a breath. He was a lawyer, I said. A good one. Someone I trusted. Emily nodded slightly. You asked him for help. Yes, and he told you to document everything. That's right. Emily's eyes flickered. That's why you wrote all of this, she said. Yes. The realization settled over her slowly. This diary, it wasn't just memories. She continued. It was evidence. I nodded, just in case I needed it. Emily stared at the pages in her hands, as if she was seeing them for the first time, not as something emotional, but as something intentional, strategic. You were preparing for a fight, she said. Yes, and you were willing to go through it alone. I didn't answer, because the truth was, I never thought I had another choice. Emily closed the diary halfway. Not fully, just enough to pause. Her eyes met mine again. You could have given me up, she said. The words were quiet, but they carried more weight than anything she had said so far. You could have let them take me? I could have, I admitted. Why didn't you? I stepped closer, not too close, just enough that she could hear me without the distance. Because you weren't something to give away, I said. Emily's eyes filled again, but she didn't look away. You were someone, I continued, and once I held you, I knew that wasn't going to change. The silence that followed was different now. Not tense, not sharp, but deep. Emily looked down at the diary again. Her fingers slowly closed it, not to reject it, but to hold it, carefully, like something fragile, like something important. You didn't just choose me once, she said softly. Her voice trembled slightly. You kept choosing me. I felt my chest tighten. Yes, I said, every day. She nodded slowly, and for the first time since this started, she didn't look like she was standing on the outside of the story anymore. She looked like she was finally stepping into it, understanding it, and maybe beginning to see me differently. But we weren't done yet, because the hardest part of the story was still ahead. Emily didn't open the diary again immediately. She just held it in both hands, her fingers resting on the worn edges, like she was trying to steady herself. You were going to run, she said quietly. Yes, with me. Yes. She looked up at me again, not with anger this time, not even with confusion, but with something much harder to face. You really thought they would come back, she said. I knew they would, I corrected gently. Emily's eyes searched mine. And you were ready to disappear, she added. I nodded. I didn't see another way. She exhaled slowly, shaking her head, as if trying to process the weight of that. You had nothing, she said. No money, no support, no plan. And you were still willing to take a newborn baby and just leave. I had you, I said. That answer lingered in the air. Not dramatic, not loud, but enough. Emily swallowed, then slowly opened the diary again. Her movements were different now. More careful, more respectful. Like she understood this wasn't just a story anymore. It was something that had shaped her life. You wrote that Daniel Parker came over that night, she said, scanning the page. Yes. He didn't like what he heard. No, he didn't. Emily frowned. You said he warned you that this could turn into a legal battle, she continued. That whoever those people were, they might actually have documents, contracts, something that could complicate everything. That's right. And you still refused to back down. I nodded. Yes. Why, she asked again, softer now. Because I had already crossed a line I couldn't come back from. Because once you choose someone, you don't unchoose them when things get difficult. But instead, I said, because I didn't believe anything they had could matter more than what was right. Emily stared at the page for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. You were stubborn, she said. I almost smiled. Yes, I admitted. She turned another page. You wrote that Daniel helped you file emergency custody paperwork, she said. That he stayed up all night drafting documents. He did. And he told you something? She added, her voice tightening again. I knew exactly what line she was reading. He told me that if they came back with stronger claims, we would need to prove that Claire had chosen me. Emily looked up. And could you? She asked. I hesitated, because this was where things became uncertain again. I had her words, I said, and I had this diary. Emily glanced down at it, but nothing official, she said. No, I admitted. Her jaw tightened. So you were fighting something that might have been legally stronger than you? Yes, and you still stayed. Yes. Emily closed her eyes for a brief moment. When she opened them again, there was something new there. Respect. Not fully formed, but growing. You really didn't have a safety net, she said. No, just belief. I nodded. Yes. She looked back down at the diary again. You wrote that the next few days felt like waiting for a storm, she said. That's exactly what it felt like. You barely left the apartment. I didn't want to risk it. You kept the curtains closed. Yes, you jumped every time someone knocked. I let out a quiet breath. Yes, Emily's voice softened. You were scared. I was terrified. The honesty of that seemed to reach her, because for the first time, she didn't look surprised by it. She understood it. You never told me any of this, she said. I didn't want you to carry that fear with you, I replied. She nodded slowly. I get that now. That was new, small, but important. Emily turned another page, and then she froze again. I saw it immediately, the shift, the tension returning. They came back, she said. Her voice dropped. Yes. When? 3 days later. Emily's fingers tightened around the page. You wrote that they didn't knock this time, she said. They just kept banging on the door. I nodded. That's how it happened. Her breathing grew uneven again. You didn't open it. No, they threatened you. Yes. Emily looked up, her eyes wide. What kind of threats? I held her gaze. The kind meant to scare someone into giving up, I said. That's not an answer. They said they could take you legally, I continued. That I was interfering with an agreement, that I didn't understand what I was getting into. Emily's face hardened. And you, I told them to leave. Her lips pressed together. And they didn't. No. The room felt tense again, like the past had stepped back into the present. Emily looked back down at the diary. You wrote that one of them said something before they left, she said slowly. My chest tightened. Yes, she hesitated, then read it out loud. You don't know who you're protecting. The words hung in the air. Heavy, ominous. Emily looked up slowly. What does that mean? She asked. I didn't answer right away. Because that question was the one that had haunted me the longest. I didn't know at the time, I said. But you found out. She said. It wasn't a question, it was a certainty. Yes. Her eyes searched mine again. What did they mean, she asked. I took a slow breath, because this was where everything shifted again. The part of the story that changed not just what happened, but what it meant. It meant, I said carefully, that Claire wasn't just running from fear. Emily's expression tightened. She was running from something real. The silence stretched between us. And those people, I continued, they weren't just trying to take you because of some agreement. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. Then why? I held her gaze. Because of who your father was. The words landed like a shockwave. Emily's eyes widened instantly. What? The single word carried disbelief, fear, and something deeper, something that had been missing all along. Your father wasn't just someone who walked away, I said slowly. Emily shook her head. No, you said you didn't know who he was. I didn't at first, I said, but Claire did. Emily's grip on the diary tightened. And she told you. She asked. I nodded. Not everything I said, but enough. The tension in the room became almost unbearable, because now the story wasn't just about survival, or choice, or love. It was about something bigger, something hidden, something that had shaped everything from the beginning. Emily stared at me, waiting, afraid. What kind of person was he? She asked. I didn't answer immediately, because the truth would change everything again. He was the reason she was running, I said quietly, and just like that. The past opened one more door Emily wasn't ready for. Emily didn't move. She didn't look down at the diary. She didn't blink. Because of who my father was, she repeated slowly. The words sounded unreal coming from her, like they belonged to someone else's life. Yes, I said quietly. Her voice sharpened. What does that even mean? I could feel the tension rising again. This wasn't just another piece of the story. This was the part that changed everything she thought she knew about herself. It means, I said carefully, your father wasn't just someone Claire ran from. Emily's eyes locked onto mine. He was someone she needed to escape. The silence stretched, then snapped. Who was he? She demanded. I took a breath. Because once I said it, There was no taking it back. He was a man with influence, I said. Money, connections, the kind of person who doesn't like losing control. Emily shook her head immediately. No, she said. That's too vague. You're still not telling me. I'm telling you what matters, I replied gently. No, she insisted. You're protecting me again. The words hit harder than she probably intended. But she wasn't wrong. I had always tried to protect her. Even now. Especially now. Emily's voice dropped, but it was more intense than before. Did he know about me? She asked. Yes. The answer came faster than I expected. Her face went pale. And he wanted me, she whispered. I hesitated. Because the truth wasn't simple. He wanted control, I said. That's not the same thing, she snapped. No, I agreed. It isn't. Emily's breathing became uneven again. So Claire was running from him, she said. And those people who came to your door, they were connected to him. Yes, and they were trying to take me. Yes! Her hands tightened into fists. Why, she asked. If he didn't want me, then why go through all of that? I held her gaze. Because you were leverage. The word hit like a blow. Emily flinched slightly. Leverage, she repeated. He didn't want a child, I continued. But he didn't want Claire to have a choice either. Emily shook her head, overwhelmed. That doesn't make any sense. It does to someone who sees people as something to control, I said. She stared at me, trying to understand, trying to reconcile that with everything she believed about the world. So what she said? He wanted to decide what happened to me, like I was just some kind of transaction. I didn't answer, because that silence was the answer. Emily turned back to the diary abruptly. Her movements were sharper now, more urgent. She flipped to the next page. You wrote that Claire told you his name, she said. Her voice trembled slightly. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, looking up suddenly. Because it wouldn't have changed anything for you growing up, I said. And it would have added fear you didn't need. That's not your decision to make, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. I nodded slowly. You're right. The admission seemed to surprise her. She looked back down again. You wrote that she begged you not to let him find me, Emily said. She did. That she said he would take me just to prove he could. I closed my eyes briefly. Yes. Emily's breath caught. And you believed her? I did. She swallowed hard. Did he ever try again? She asked. The question lingered. Heavy. I hesitated, because this was another truth I had hidden. Yes, I said, finally. Emily's head snapped up. What? He didn't stop after that first visit. I continued. He just changed his approach. Her eyes widened. What kind of approach? Legal, I said. Subtle? Quiet? The kind that doesn't involve banging on doors. Emily's expression darkened. You mean he tried to take me through the system? Yes. And you fought him. I did. Her voice trembled again. How legal? I said. Subtle. Quiet. The kind that doesn't involve banging on doors? Emily's expression darkened. You mean he tried to take me through the system? Yes. And you fought him. I did. Her voice trembled again. How? With everything I had? I said. Emily stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time all over again. You went to court, she said. Yes. You didn't tell me that? No. Why not? Because you were a child, I said. And I wanted you to feel safe. Not like your life was something people were fighting over. Emily looked down again. Her fingers brushed across the page. You wrote about sleepless nights, she said. About meetings with lawyers? About feeling like you were always one step away from losing me. I nodded. That's exactly how it felt. Her voice softened. You were scared. I was. And you still stayed. Yes. She looked up slowly. Did you ever think about giving up? She asked. The question hung in the air. Honest. Painful. I didn't answer immediately, because the truth mattered here. There were moments I said quietly when I wondered if someone else could give you a better life. Emily's face tightened. But I never considered letting them take you, I added quickly. Not like that. Not without knowing you would be safe. She nodded slowly, understanding, not fully, but more than before. You didn't trust him, she said. No, not even a little. No. Emily took a shaky breath, then looked back at the diary again. You wrote that the case lasted months, she said. Yes, you didn't trust him, she said. No, not even a little. No. Emily took a shaky breath, then looked back at the diary again. You wrote that the case lasted months, she said. Yes, that it felt like years. It did. And then she paused, her voice dropping again. Something changed. I felt my chest tighten. Yes. What she asked. I stepped a little closer. Because this part mattered. He lost interest, I said. Emily frowned. What do you mean? I continued once he realized he couldn't control the outcome, he walked away. Her expression twisted. That's it, she said. After everything he just left, yes. The simplicity of it made it worse. Emily shook her head. That's unbelievable. It's real, I said. She looked down again. Her fingers slowly closed the diary this time. Not halfway, all the way. Her grip tightened around it. You went through all of that, she said. Her voice was quiet, but filled with something deeper now. And I never knew. No, I said. Not until now. I nodded. Emily looked up at me, and for the first time, there was no anger in her eyes, no mockery, no distance, just something raw, something real. You didn't just choose me, she said slowly. Her voice trembled. You fought for me. I felt my throat tighten. Yes. She nodded once, and in that moment, the story wasn't just something she was reading anymore. It was something she was finally beginning to feel. Emily didn't speak for a long time. She just stood there, holding the closed. She just stood there, holding the closed diary against her chest, like it was the only thing keeping her steady. He walked away, she said finally. Her voice was quiet, but there was something sharp underneath it. Yes, diary against her chest, like it was the only thing keeping her steady. He walked away, she said finally. Her voice was quiet, but there was something sharp underneath it. Yes, I said. After everything he did, after trying to take me, after dragging you through court? She shook her head slowly. He just walked away. That's right. Emily let out a short, bitter breath. That doesn't feel like justice. No, I admitted. It didn't feel like justice to me either. She looked up at me. Then what was it? I hesitated, because I had asked myself that same question for years. It was survival, I said. Emily frowned. For who? For us. The answer hung between us. Not satisfying, but real. Emily turned away slightly, pacing a few steps across the room. Her mind was still racing. I could see it, all the pieces finally coming together. Everything she had believed about her life. Shifting. Rearranging. You said he had power, she said. Money. Connections. Yes. So why would someone like that just stop? I watched her carefully, because this was the part she needed to understand. Because control only matters when you can win, I said. She stopped pacing, turned back to me. And he couldn't win, no. Because of you. I shook my head slightly. Because of us, I corrected. Emily stared at me. You didn't give him anything to take, I continued. No fear he could use. No mistakes he could exploit. No reason to believe he could break what we had. Because of us, I corrected. Emily stared at me. You didn't give him anything to take, I continued. No fear he could use. No mistakes he could exploit. No reason to believe he could break what we had. Emily's expression softened slightly. You made it too hard, she said. Yes, and he got bored. I nodded. That's what people like him do. When something stops being easy, they move on. Emily's jaw tightened. That's disgusting. It is. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was different. Grounded. Like something inside her had settled. Slowly. She looked down at her had settled. Slowly. She looked down at the diary again. Then opened it one more time. Carefully. Respectfully. As if she understood now that every word inside it had been written for Aria's son. You wrote that after the case ended, the diary again. Then opened it one more time. Carefully. Respectfully. As if she understood now that every word inside it had been written for a reason. You wrote that after the case ended, everything felt quiet, she said. It did. No more threats. No more letters. No more fear. Yes. Emily traced her finger along the page. But you didn't feel relieved. I smiled faintly. No. Why not? Because I didn't trust the quiet, I said. She nodded. That makes sense. She kept reading. You said it took months before you stopped checking the locks 3 times every night. I let out a small breath. That's true. And even then you never fully stopped. No. Emily looked up. That's why you were always so careful, she said. With everything. Yes. With me. Yes. Her voice softened. You weren't just strict. I didn't say anything. You were protecting me, she finished. The realization landed fully this time. Not halfway. Not uncertain. But clear. Yes, I said. Emily looked back down again. You wrote that you finally started to feel like a real family, she said. I remember that. That you stopped feeling like you were just holding everything together. I nodded. That was a big moment. She smiled faintly. You said I started smiling more, she read. That I laughed easily. That I wasn't afraid. My chest tightened. That part mattered the most. Emily looked up at me. And you never told me why. No, not about any of it. I shook my head. I didn't want your childhood to feel like something fragile. She nodded slowly. You wanted it to feel normal. Yes. And it did, she said. The words were soft, but they carried something important, something healing. For me, it was normal, she added. I swallowed hard. Good. Emily took a breath, then turned to the final pages of that section. You raw the final pages of that section. You row T about Michael Keller, she said. My heart tightened slightly at his name. Yes, he came into our lives later. Yes. Emily read silently for a moment, then spoke again. You didn't tell him everything right away. T about Michael Keller, she said. My heart tightened slightly at his name. Yes. He came into our lives later. Yes. Emily read silently for a moment, then spoke again. You didn't tell him everything right away. No. Why not? Because I didn't know if I could trust anyone like that again, I admitted. Emily nodded. That makes sense. But he stayed, she said after a moment. Yes. He didn't walk away. No. Her voice softened. And he chose me too. Yes. She looked up. And you let him? I did. Was that hard? The question surprised me. Yes, I said honestly. It was. Why? Because choosing someone once is one thing, I said. Letting someone else share that responsibility, that's harder. Emily smiled faintly. But you did it anyway. Yes. Why I met her eyes? Because you deserved more than just me. The words lingered, gentle, honest. Emily's eyes filled again, but this time the tears didn't look like pain. They looked like understanding. You gave me a family, she said. I shook my head softly. We built one. She nodded, and for the first time there was peace in that agreement. Emily closed the diary again, slowly, carefully, then held it in both hands. I thought this was just something old, she said. Something embarrassing, something I could laugh at. I said nothing, because this moment belonged to her. But it's not, she continued. It's everything. Her voice trembled slightly. This is my story. Yes, I said softly. And yours, she added. Yes. She took a deep breath, then stepped closer, not hesitating this time, not holding back. You didn't just raise me, she said, her eyes locked onto mine. You saved me. I felt my throat tighten. No, I said gently. I chose you. Emily shook her head. And you kept choosing me, she replied. The room fell into a quiet that didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of truth, of understanding, of something that had taken years to reach this moment. And even now, there was still one last thing she needed to hear. One last piece of the story. Not about the past, but about what it meant. Emily didn't speak right away. She stood there holding the diary like something sacred now, something she had once misunderstood and could never unsee again. You could have told me, she said softly. Her voice wasn't accusing anymore. It was searching. I could have, I admitted. Why didn't you? I took a slow breath. Because this question, this was the one that had lived quietly inside me for years. I didn't want your life to feel like it belonged to someone else's decisions, I said. Emily frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means, I continued, I didn't want you growing up thinking you were defined by what someone tried to do to you or by the kind of man your father was. She held my gaze. And instead, you let me believe you were just strict, she said. I smiled faintly. Yes, you let me think you didn't trust me. That part wasn't true, I said gently. I always trusted you. Then why did it feel like you didn't? She asked. Because I was afraid. Because I knew what the world could do. Because I had seen how quickly everything could be taken away. I trusted you, I repeated. I just didn't trust everything else. Emily's eyes softened. That answer landed differently. She nodded slowly. I think I understand that now. There was a quiet pause. Not uncomfortable, not heavy, just real. Then Emily looked down at the diary again. There's still more? She said. Yes. Her fingers opened it again, carefully, reverently, and she turned to the final pages. You wrote about the day everything finally felt settled, she said. I remember that day. You said I was about 3 years old, she continued, and you realized no one was coming anymore. I nodded. That was the first time I believed we were truly safe. Emily smiled faintly. You described it like a moment you could breathe again. That's exactly how it felt. She read silently for a few seconds. Then her expression shifted again. Not fear this time, something softer. You wrote about me? She said. Her voice dropped. Yes. You said I used to hold your hand when we crossed the street, even when I didn't need to. I smiled. You did. You said I would look up at you like you were the only person in the world. My chest tightened. That part stayed with me. Emily blinked quickly, her eyes filling again. And you wrote. She paused, her voice trembling slightly, that you hoped I would never find out how close you came to losing me. The words hung in the air, heavy, honest, and impossible to take back. Emily slowly closed the diary again. But this time, she didn't hold on to it tightly. She let it rest in her hands, as if she no longer needed to cling to it to understand. You didn't lose me, she said quietly. No, I replied, and you never will. The certainty in her voice caught me off guard. Emily took a step closer, then another, closing the distance between us that had been there for years. I used to think you were hiding things because you didn't trust me, she said. I know, but you were hiding things because you were protecting me. Yes, she nodded. And I made fun of this, she added, glancing down at the diary. I laughed at it like it was something small. I didn't respond, because she didn't need me to. I didn't understand, she said. Her voice broke slightly. I didn't understand what you gave up. I stepped closer now too, slowly, carefully. You don't owe me anything for that, I said. Her head shook immediately. Yes, I do. I didn't understand, she said. Her voice broke slightly. I didn't understand what you gave up. I stepped closer now too, slowly, carefully. You don't owe me anything for that, I said. Her head shook immediately. Yes, I do. No, I said gently. You don't. I do, she insisted. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. You gave up your life, she said. Your plans, your safety, everything. I shook my head. I didn't give up my life, I said softly. I chose it. Emily stared at me. You chose me, she corrected. Yes. The room fell quiet again. But this time, it felt full, like something that had been broken was finally finding its shape again. Emily looked down at the diary one last time, then back up at me. You kept all of this, she said. Yes, for years. Yes. Why? The question was gentle, but important. I smiled faintly. Because one day I said I thought you might need to know the truth. Emily swallowed. And if I never asked, then you never would have had to carry it. She nodded slowly. Understanding, not just the story, but the intention behind it, the love behind it. You didn't want credit, she said. No, you didn't want recognition. No, you just wanted me to have a normal life. Yes, Emily let out a quiet breath. Then, without hesitation, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. For a moment, I didn't move, because it had been so long since we stood this close without tension between us, without distance, without something unspoken in the way. Then I held her back, carefully, gently, like I used to when she was small. I'm sorry, she whispered. The words pressed against my shoulder. You don't need to be, I said softly. Yes, I do, she insisted. I didn't see you. Not really. I closed my eyes briefly. You see me now, I said. That was enough. Emily pulled back slightly, looking at me, her eyes still wet, but clear. You're not who I thought you were, she said. I smiled gently. No, you're stronger. I shook my head. No, I said. Just someone who made a choice. Emily nodded. And kept making it, she added. Yes. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was complete. But there was still one final piece left. Not in the diary, not in the past, but in what all of it meant now. And what came next. There are moments in life when everything finally makes sense. Not all at once. Not like a sudden answer, but slowly, like a quiet realization settling into place. That was what I saw in Emily's eyes. Not confusion anymore. Not anger. Not even hurt. Understanding. Real deep understanding. She stood there in front of me, the diary resting loosely in her hands now. Not something she needed to cling to, but something she finally respected. I used to think my life was simple, she said softly. I didn't interrupt, because this wasn't my moment anymore. It was hers. I thought I knew where I came from, she continued, who I belonged to, what my story was. Her eyes lifted to meet mine. And now I know. It was never simple. No, I said gently. It wasn't. Emily took a slow breath. But it wasn't broken either, she added. The words caught me off guard. What do you mean? I asked. She stepped a little closer. I mean, I didn't come from something missing, she said. I came from something chosen. My chest tightened, because that was something I had never been able to give words to. Not like that. You were chosen by her, Emily continued. Even if she couldn't stay, she chose to protect me. I nodded slowly. She did. And you? Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. Now you didn't just accept that you carried it. I swallowed hard. Yes, you turned it into a life. The room went quiet again. But it wasn't heavy. It was full. Full of everything that had been unspoken for years. I thought you were hiding things because you were ashamed, Emily said. I wasn't, I replied. I know that now. She gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. I just didn't understand what strength looks like when it's quiet. That hit deeper than anything else she had said, because for years that had been the hardest part. Not being seen, not being understood, not being recognized for the things that didn't look dramatic from the outside. "You were never weak," Emily continued. "Not once." I shook my head gently. "I was afraid more times than I can count." "That doesn't make you weak," she said. "It makes you someone who stayed anyway." The words settled into something solid between us. Something real. Emily looked down at the diary one last time. Then she walked over to the table and placed it there. Carefully, not closing a chapter, but honoring it. "I'm glad I read it," she said, "even though it changed everything." "I'm glad you did too," I said. She turned back to me. "And I'm sorry I laughed," she added. "You don't have to be," I said. "Yes, I do," she insisted softly, "because I didn't see the truth when it was right in front of me." I stepped closer. "You see it now," I said. "That's what matters." Emily nodded. Then she hesitated. Just for a second. Before asking the one question I knew would come eventually. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. The room went still again. Because this question, this one wasn't about the past. It was about everything that came after. "Regret what I asked," gently. "Choosing me," she said. The words were quiet, careful, but real. I didn't hesitate. No. The answer came instantly, without doubt, without hesitation, without even a second thought. Not once I added. Emily's eyes filled again, but this time there was no pain in them. Only something warm, something steady. "Even when it was hard," she asked. "Especially when it was hard," I said. She nodded slowly, then stepped closer again. Not unsure this time, not hesitant, certain. And she wrapped her arms around me once more. This time, I didn't hesitate either. I held her, the way I had all those years ago, when she was small, when everything was uncertain, when I didn't know what the future would look like, but knew I would face it with her. "I should have known," she whispered, "knew what I asked softly, that you would never let anything happen to me." I closed my eyes briefly. "I tried," I said. "You didn't just try," she replied. "You did." The silence that followed felt different from anything that had come before. Not empty, not heavy, but complete. Like something that had been broken had finally found its way back together. After a moment, Emily pulled back slightly, her expression calm now, clear. "What happens now?" she asked. I smiled gently. "Now," I said, "we move forward." "With the truth," she added. "Yes," she nodded, "and we don't hide things anymore." "No," I agreed. "We don't." She took a breath, then smiled faintly. "I think I like this version of our story better." I laughed softly. "Me too. Because this version was real, and sometimes that's all that matters." There are truths in life that don't arrive when we're ready for them. They arrive when we're finally strong enough to understand them. Sometimes the people we misunderstand the most are the ones who have loved us the deepest, just in ways we couldn't see at the time. Judith didn't just raise a child. She chose her. Again and again. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. And Emily didn't just discover a hidden past. She discovered the kind of love that doesn't ask for recognition, only for the chance to protect, to stay, and to endure. Family isn't always about where you come from. It's about who stands beside you when everything else falls apart. It's about the people who choose you, even when they don't have to. If this story touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever misunderstood someone who loved you deeply? Share your experience in the comments. And if you believe in stories about second chances, quiet strength, and real love, don't forget to like and subscribe. Wherever you're watching from, tell me your location and time. I'd love to know who's listening.